The call for justice is getting louder. Local civil rights leaders now joining the family of Alberto Espinoza Sierra, demanding answers for his death at the hands of Wilmington police.
Police say officers shot and killed Espinoza Sierra in a parking garage March 8th after they say he refused to stop his car and drove directly at several officers. WECT's J.C. Caldwell went to a news conference today that called for justice. She also has the details on where the investigation stands at this hour.
This memorial on 3rd Street is a reminder of the city's history of racial violence in 1898.
Okay, here we go. Good morning.
Now, over a century later, local organizations held a conference here, saying yet again they're calling out an injustice.
And in the words of Dr. King, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
This comes 9 days after police say Alberto Espinoza Sierra was shot and killed by officers in a Wilmington parking garage after refusing to stop his vehicle. WPD officials say Espinoza Sierra drove directly at officers, putting their lives in danger and forcing them to respond. However, Espinoza Sierra's family is sticking to their belief what happened was wrong. They say police didn't need to shoot. He was unarmed.
He was only in his car trying to get home to us.
Sonia Patrick and other leaders with the National Black Leadership Caucus say they stand with the family.
We will fight for justice by any means necessary.
Refusing a police order to stop is not a reason to be killed.
We raise our voices not in grief, but in purpose. Not in anger, but in action.
Previously, police said they were trying to stop Espinoza Sierra because he matched the description of a shooting suspect they were looking for, but he didn't comply.
No justice.
No peace.
When do we want it?
Now.
Patrick says they want the officers to be held accountable, and they want systemic changes, specifically implicit bias training.
A lot of officers are very clueless, and they believe in the stereotypes of people in marginalized communities. And there are a lot of stereotypes and misinformation, and that can be very problematic.
WPD officials say they can't comment while the State Bureau of Investigation investigates. SBI officials say they are still investigating and reviewing body camera footage.
Why do we want justice? When do we want it? Now!
Espinoza Sierra's family tells me that they now have his body, so they were finally able to make funeral arrangements for this weekend. Reporting in Wilmington, J.C. Caldwell, WECT News.